When a 71-year-old man's desperate plea to access his money for life-saving medication was met with corporate coldness, no one could have imagined that an NBA legend would step in to change his fate. What unfolded next is a story that reminds us of the power of compassion and justice. What exactly would happen next is going to be shocking. Be sure to keep watching. The glass doors of the First Capital Bank burst open, and Walter Thompson, a retired basketball coach, stood trembling as security guards dragged him out. His weathered hands clutched his wooden cane as his worn shoes scuffed the marble floor. The bank teller's voice, sharp and unyielding, echoed in his ears. "Without updated digital identification, we cannot access your account, no exceptions." Walter's voice quivered as he pleaded, "Please, I've been banking here for 30 years. Miss Sarah used to help me, she knew my face." He fumbled with a stack of old documents, utility bills, his veteran's card, and a dog-eared social security letter, before the papers scattered to the floor like autumn leaves. He tried to show her every single document he had to convince the bank teller, but to no avail. The old man's plea caught the attention of nearby customers, and they too felt uncomfortable at the old man's plight. They too wanted to help the man get what he sorely needed. A few stepped forward voluntarily to help the man solve his problem, but unfortunately, none of their efforts paid off as the security guards stood in front of them, waving them away. Walter's voice cracked as he continued to explain further. "My wife's medication. The pharmacy closes at 5. I just need to access my pension." Despite the explanation, the security guards still escorted him to the entrance. As Walter stood outside, dumped unceremoniously onto the cold bench near the bank entrance, the prescription slip in his pocket felt heavier than ever. There was a reason why he needed to receive his pension that much. His wife, Margaret, was previously diagnosed with cancer not long ago, and her oncologist had just changed her treatment due to the complications. The new medication, costing nearly $500, had to be picked up before the pharmacy closed. But with no access to his own money, Walter felt helpless. There was no one who was able to help him convince the bank teller to help him get the pension he needed. Meanwhile, inside the bank, Rebecca Stevens, the new bank manager, reviewed Walter's account. At 34, she had climbed the corporate ladder quickly, known for her efficiency in implementing strict policies. However, those same policies now loomed like an invisible wall between Walter and his wife's survival. "Mr. Thompson," she explained, her tone detached, "our new system requires mandatory digital verification. Physical IDs are no longer sufficient." Walter shook his head, his voice cracking. "But I don't have a smartphone. Margaret and I share a simple flip phone. It was always enough." Rebecca's corporate training pushed her toward compliance. "Perhaps a family member can help you set this up," she suggested, fully aware that the process would take days. But Walter didn't have days. The medication deadline was just 2 hours away. As the drama unfolded, Shaquille O'Neal and his teenage daughter, Miara, arrived at the bank. Outside, they spotted Walter on the bench, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Scattered at his feet were old photographs, medical prescriptions, and banking statements. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal, or known commonly as Shaq, is an American professional basketball player who is a sport analyst on the television program Inside the NBA. "Dad, look," Miara whispered, tugging on her father's sleeve. "He's crying." Shaq, towering at 7 feet 1 inch, approached the elderly man. "Sir, are you okay?" he asked gently. Walter looked up, hastily wiping his eyes. He explained his predicament, the new digital requirements, his inability to access his account, and Margaret's urgent need for medication. As he spoke, his voice broke, the weight of his helplessness evident in every word. Miara knelt to gather the fallen papers. She picked up a photograph, a team picture from Millbrook High's championship season. "Dad, look, he's Coach Thompson," she exclaimed. "They talked about him at camp today." Shaq recognized the name immediately. Walter Thompson was more than a coach. He was a community hero. Stories about his dedication to underprivileged youth, funding uniforms out of his own pocket, and mentoring students long after they'd graduated were legendary. Moved by Walter's plight, Shaq extended a hand and convinced him to return to the reception, hoping Shaq would be able to convince the bank teller to help the old man. Walter replied with a hesitation in his voice. "They won't help me." "They'll help now," Shaq assured him, his deep voice firm yet kind. Inside, the lobby grew silent as everyone in the vicinity saw the towering figure of Shaq walking toward the reception. He was accompanied by Walter and Miara. Upon seeing Shaq, Rebecca Stevens looked up, startled by the sudden shift in the room's atmosphere. "Miss Stevens," Shaq began, his presence commanding. He began to ask her a question. "This man is a pillar of this community. You're telling me a computer system is worth more than his years of service and loyalty?" It was at this point there was a sudden shift in Rebecca's expression as she was fumbling for a response, her corporate training clashing with the humanity of the situation. I can't override the system. It's policy." "Then call someone who can," Shaq insisted, "because this isn't just about money. It's about doing what's right." As Rebecca hesitated, Miara pulled out her phone, reading the bank's policies aloud. "It says, exceptions can be made in emergencies. If this isn't an emergency, I don't know what is." The other customers, emboldened by Shaq's stand, began murmuring in agreement. It didn't take long for someone to step forth and support the old man. The first person who spoke up was a young mother. "He's Coach Thompson. My brother played on his team. He bought him shoes when we couldn't afford them." The next person, who was an elderly woman, who also chimed in to help the man. "He wrote my grandson's college recommendation. He's the reason my boy is a doctor today." The growing voices of the community turned the tide. Rebecca, realizing the stakes, made a call to corporate headquarters, asking her higher-up what she needed to do in this sort of situation. After a tense conversation with the manager, she returned with a resolution. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her tone softer, "we've made an exception. You can access your funds." Walter's hands trembled as he signed the withdrawal slip. The money, finally in his grasp, felt like a lifeline. He turned to Shaq, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have, Coach," Shaq replied, smiling. "You shaped this community. We're just returning the favor." As Walter left to fill Margaret's prescription, the lobby erupted in applause. Shaq and Miara stayed behind, ensuring the bank reviewed its policies to avoid such incidents in the future. This story isn't just about one man's struggle. It's a reminder of how systems can fail the very people they're meant to serve. It's about the power of standing up for what's right and the importance of community in moments of crisis. Walter Thompson's story and the unlikely hero who stood by him will be remembered not as a tale of corporate rigidity, but as a testament to compassion and justice. Together they proved that sometimes one voice, no matter how big or small, can make all the difference. If this story moved you, share it with others. Let's work toward a world where no one has to fight alone for what they rightfully deserve. As the video concludes, the message lingers, a story of resilience, kindness, and standing up for what's right. Thanks to a moment of compassion and the actions of an unexpected ally, Walter's dignity and his wife's well-being were restored. This story is a powerful testament to the importance of empathy and community. It shows how small actions, whether it's pausing to listen, helping someone gather their papers, or using your platform for change, can ripple out and create something extraordinary. Let's strive to be that change in our daily lives. If you were moved by this story, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us of the power of humanity. Together, we can shine a light on stories that matter. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.